Welcome to the Smarter Science of Slim, the scientifically proven program where you eat more and exercise less to burn fat and boost health.
Eat smarter, exercise smarter, live better. I am so ready for that.
Hey everyone, Jonathan Bailor back with another bonus Smarter Science of Slim podcast. Today's episode is one that is definitely going to make you smile. I hope they all make you smile, but this one's going to make you smile even bigger because we have a wonderful woman with us. She is a registered dietitian, a food and nutrition writer. She is a plant-based nutrition expert. She is the author of the wonderful book, The Plant-Powered Diet, the lifelong eating plan for achieving optimal health beginning today. Sharon Palmer, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Well, Sharon, just to get us started, what set you on this path to not only heal people, but you think much bigger. You want to heal the whole world.
Yes. Well, ever since I was a little girl, I was just fascinated with food and nutrition and studying it. I went to university and received my degree in nutrition. And I've always just been fascinated with this cross-section of food and health and how powerful it is. Food is medicine. And basically eating more of a whole plant food-based diet is really my approach to wellness.
Sharon, one thing that I really liked about your message, and I haven't gotten all the way through your book yet, but like right on the cover, and I have a lot of respect for this, right on the cover of your book, obviously it says the plant-powered diet. So someone might see this on the shelf. They might, if they don't know you and they don't know your work, and say, oh my gosh, like militant veganism is about to be placed upon me. But you say right on the cover of your book, power up on a wide array of whole plant foods, whether you're an omnivore, vegetarian, or vegan. So it seems like you're taking a much more inclusive approach.
That's right, because I believe that there's so much science right now that's pointing to eating a more plant-based diet. And that really indicates that we should be trimming our animal food intake a little bit and eating more whole plant foods. And that can mean different things to different people because not everybody wants to be a vegan. Not everybody wants to be a vegetarian. But I believe everybody can eat a plant-based diet where they're focusing on more plant foods.
Sharon, why do people seem to make this so much of an either or proposition? Like it's either you can eat a lot of plants or you're a carnivore. Like it seems that even someone like, let's say, Nell Stevenson, who's like a big paleo advocate, I was speaking to her the other day and she was like, hey, even this paleo diet that people often call like this carnivorous diet is plant-based. At least 50% of your plate should be vegetables. Why is there so much debate when it seems like we all basically agree the vast majority of your plate should be whole food, nutrient-dense plants?
Yeah, I know there is a lot of polarization right now between kind of these two camps, but I look at it at more of an overall big picture. And most nutrition experts out there today recommend a plant-based diet. About even 3/4 of your food should be plant-based. And this is pretty much, even the government, that's in the dietary guidelines, which comes from our government's nutrition panel of experts. And even when you look at traditional indigenous diets throughout the world, for example, the Mediterranean diet, the famous Mediterranean diet with all this research, it is a plant-based diet where most of the food is coming from whole plant foods rather than animal foods. But, my approach is more broad because I would just like people to return to eating whole plant foods. And what I mean by whole is foods that come back to nature. And I do think that a lot of people are really putting an emphasis, no matter what their specific micro challenges are, they're really coming back to this whole plant food rather than highly processed plant foods.
We can all celebrate that sentiment of things found directly in nature rather than things coming off of an assembly line for sure. And I love that you help to keep people focused on really the problem in our country is so many of us aren't eating food anymore. We're eating edible products, right?
Exactly. I mean, I really focus on that because if you think about it, a lot of the junk food that we're eating is plant-based. So you can't just say, oh, eat a plant-based diet. You need to focus on eating a whole foods plant-based diet. And one of the things I like to say, because people will ask me, well, what does that really mean? And what I like to say is when you look at a food, when you're in the supermarket, can you see how it was touched by Mother Nature? Can you envision how it grew on a farm? Can you see that it came from a plant or a field? And when you pick up a bunch of green beans, you can see that came from a plant. Or when you pick up some quinoa, those are the seeds from a quinoa plant. But when you have a package of highly processed chips or puffs or crackers, it's very hard sometimes to see the trace of Mother Nature.
Sharon, I'm going to give you a verbal hug here because you are one of the few people that explicitly comes right out and says, and you just did it just now, the vast majority of junk edible products people are eating are plant-based. A Snickers bar is plant-based. So it's not enough to just say plant-based. We've got to say nutrient dense. We've got to say found directly in nature. And one other conflating factor that I want your opinion on, because I know you touch on this in your book, is the conflation between a vegan, vegetarian, or let's say even a plant-based diet and a low-fat diet. Because like for me personally, I love cocoa. I love coconut. I love macadamia nuts. I love avocados and chia seeds and flax seeds. In fact, I bet I get at least 30% of my calories from plant fats. That's still a plant-based diet. All the research I've read suggests that's extremely healthy, but there seems to be this conflation sometimes in the vegan and vegetarian communities between eating plant-based and eating low-fat.
You're absolutely right. And I am in the camp that agrees with you. I believe that there's no evidence really to indicate that healthy people should be reducing their fat so much, especially when you're on a vegan diet where you're eating a low-fat diet to begin with. So I recommend about 30% of calories from fat. And there's a lot of research that shows that all these healthy plant fats, especially ones from avocado and nuts and olives, are actually good for your heart. And, look at the Mediterranean diet again, up to 35% fat. There's a variety of fat levels, but it's a moderately high fat diet. And, they have lower risks of heart disease. So plus I think there's the whole delicious factor. I think that fats bring so much flavor. And I'm not saying that you need to just pour it on. This is still a moderate use, but they add so much flavor. And I think, it's not so much the amount of fat as the type of fat you're choosing.
Exactly. I was speaking with Dr. Barry Sears, and he made a really good classification, let's say, of fats. There's bad fats, just like there's bad carbs and bad, processed spam protein. So there's bad fats. There's neutral fats, which should really just be thought of as sources of calories. And then there are therapeutic fats, like these omega-3 fats, these monounsaturated fats, these medium chain triglycerides. And why? Because obviously you're plugged into the plant-based community. Why would anyone say that a diet that got 30, instead of eating starch, you get your calories from healthy therapeutic monounsaturated omega-3 and other healthy fats? Why would anyone say that's unhealthy? I just don't even understand that.
Yeah, I don't understand it either. And I think, I hate to see people put so much negative emphasis on diet where it almost becomes punitive. Because my version of a vegan diet, which I in my book, I have a vegan, vegetarian, and omnivore plan, is very delicious because there's nuts and olive oil and olives and avocados. Those add so much flavor to foods and textures. So, I sometimes I just hate to see that where, a diet has to be so bland and boring, but I do think that the research supports that moderate amounts of healthy fats, somewhere in this range of 30% is actually better for you. So, I know that some experts are looking, they have published research on lower fat diets that can actually be reverse disease. So they're working with clients that have existing issues. And they have published research that shows that they can treat people with these low fat diets. But, my population is the everyday people who want to be well and healthy and live a longer, rich life. And that, that's what I'm speaking to.
And it seems like there's also so many complicating factors, Sharon. For example, having a study that says this 0% fat diet does something, it doesn't prove that a 10% diet doesn't do that. It actually just proves what the study studied, which is that that type of diet did that. But so often then we're led to believe that that is the only way of eating that can do that, when the study doesn't prove that. It just proved that that diet did. Did that make sense?
Yeah, no, the world of nutrition research is very complicated, and most people do not understand it. So we have studies that are published that are conflicting, like there was in the news, all of these studies show that eating breakfast actually helps with your weight. And then one study showed that it could make you gain weight. And now all the other studies have been, people don't understand that you have to look at the body of research sometimes. And maybe one study will show one thing, but then you have to go back and look at the design of the study. And there are always co-founding factors, So nutrition research is not perfect. It's just, it kind of steers us in a particular direction, and we have to look at the body of science, in my view.
Sharon, speaking of looking at the body of science, how much of this also has to be us looking at our individual bodies to decide what's best for us when it comes to picking between the whole foods available?
That's a good point, too, because we all have individual preferences and profiles, and this is becoming more and more apparent as we understand the genetic, the human genome, and how we all have individual genetic profiles, and we may handle foods in a different way than somebody else. So we're just starting to learn this whole new field. So I really do think you have to listen to your body. You have to listen to what it's saying and what makes you feel good, and that's a huge part of having a diet that works for you, because I really don't believe that people should go on and off a diet, and a diet shouldn't be punishment. I hate that whole philosophy. I think a diet is your eating style, the way that something that nourishes your body. It makes you feel good about yourself. It's sustainable. It's something you can do every day. It's not something you can't wait to get off of.
You said eating style. I really, really like that term, because one thing that I so admire about vegetarians and vegans is how they do treat that lifestyle, even if it's an unhealthy vegan that eats junk food all day. Like it's not a diet, it's a style of eating, and they're not like waking up in the morning just thinking, oh my God, it's such a struggle. Like it actually empowers them to have that eating style. What can omnivores learn so that we stop thinking in terms of dieting and start thinking just in terms of a whole foods, nutrient dense eating style?
Yeah, I think people really have to struggle with this idea that healthy is delicious, because, let's face it, all the surveys show the number one factor that people use in making food choices is taste. And it always health is growing in importance, but taste is always number one. So a healthy diet and a healthy eating style has to be one that you feel is delicious and satisfying and rewarding. And I'm all about food traditions and cooking and eating with friends and family and enjoying food, So I think that's, a lot of people still think a healthy diet is a punishment, that, oh, I'm going to have to do this. I'm going to hate it. I can't eat this and that. But you have to find things that are delicious that you enjoy. Find your favorite recipes. And with plant-based, this is the same thing, because I think, for example, I just love what chefs have done with vegetables. Now I live in California, and it's just all about the vegetables. The meat is like an afterthought now. They're just taking farmers market vegetables and making these amazing side dishes and showing that, those kinds of foods can be just as delicious.
Speaking of delicious things we could eat, I know you're working on Plant Powered for Life, which will provide 52 simple steps as well as over 100 recipes to get you started on a more nutrient-dense whole food lifestyle. What are some of your, maybe people would see them and not even believe that these things are healing and healthy? They're so delicious. They're wonderful treats that also heal us.
Yeah, for instance, one of the recipes that I developed for my new book is the jambalaya. And jambalaya is a classic Creole dish, and it really exemplifies that a lot of plant-based diets come from a culture, because most cultures, indigenous cultures, ate a plant-based diet because meat was precious and scarce and expensive. So they ate plant foods that surrounded them that were local to them. So in a jambalaya, I have whole grain brown rice, and I have legumes, red beans, and lots of spices. Spices are anti-inflammatory. A lot of vegetables in there, okra, peppers, and it's so flavorful that I'll serve it to a group of omnivores and not even mention that it's vegan, and everybody will say it's the best jambalaya they've ever had. So that's just an example of how you can make foods delicious. I believe in a lot of herbs and spices, which we know are health protective now. That's just one example.
Sharon, would you have any concerns with someone who maybe they just really, you talk about a eating style that is delicious and one that you can sustain and enjoy for life. So let's say you're signed up, you're an individual, Sally. This individual's name is Sally. She's signed up, she wants to eat nutrient-dense foods, but she really likes the taste of fat. Fat is very satisfying for her. So she chooses to focus maybe a little bit less on starch and a little bit more on healthy fats. Is that something you would find to be useful, or do you feel that grains and starches are uniquely critical?
Well, I do think that we have to look at people on an individual basis, and that's one thing that dietitians are really good at doing. If you find a dietitian who can see you on a one-on-one basis and help you develop something that works for you, because people do have preferences, and those need to be accommodated so that it's an eating style that works for you. I do think that, as I said, a moderate fat level is good. I like to keep it below 35% fat. Naturally, a vegan and vegetarian diet tends to be a little higher in carbohydrates. But I also think it's important for vegans and vegetarians to get their protein up there, which I think that's a challenge and something that's often missed. So that's one thing that I would work with them too, to make sure there's a balance. So it's not just a carbohydrate, focused diet, that we're getting all those other macronutrients in there too.
Well, do you see a future for, just as compelling as the eating nutrient-dense plants research is, there's a lot of really compelling research on, for some individuals, a much more moderate and even lower carbohydrate intake can be beneficial. The question is then, well, where else do I get my calories from? So do you think it's possible to eat a high-fat, plant-based, extremely healthy diet?
It would depend on what you're saying is high fat. I mean, you'd have to work it out where you're getting everything you need, because that's, once you start on a vegan diet, you're challenged to make sure you're getting everything in there. So, for a vegan, a lot of their protein sources, for instance, legumes is a huge protein source. It's high in protein, but it also has carbohydrates. Soy, is another good protein source, or nuts. Nuts are higher in fat and protein rather than carbohydrates. So, it would have to be worked out. But I believe that it's not so much the volume of carbohydrates that's as important as the quality of carbohydrates. And this keeps going back. If you're eating completely whole plant foods, your glycemic index for these foods is very low. For instance, a whole grain, when you're eating the actual kernel, like barley or wheat berries or rye berries or quinoa, the glycemic index is so low. But if you grind it into a flour, even if it's a whole grain flour, it goes up dramatically. So, when you're looking at the quality of carbohydrates, I think that's a really important part of that whole thing.
I love that distinction. Well, let me get your expert opinion on a very concrete example. Let's say someone comes into your office. Let's say that person's name is J. Bailor. Wait, no, that's too obvious. Let's call this person Jonathan B. Let's say Jonathan B. comes into your office and he says, I'm getting the vast majority of my protein from very lean, humanely raised, non-hormonally poisoned fish and mammals, cows, for example, grass-fed cows, wild-caught, non-mercury saturated fish. And I eat a massive amount of vegetables. We're talking between 10 and 20 servings of non-starchy vegetables, a large majority of which are raw throughout the day. I eat some berries on occasion, but I get the vast majority of my calories from plant fats. So from macadamia nuts, from avocado, from coconut, from flax, chia, all that kind of fun stuff. What would your reaction to me be?
So basically, you're saying that it's almost they're eliminating grains from their diet, or this is like the main thing that I would be concerned about, because this is a popular trend right now. Because the thing about completely eliminating grains is they're very, very rich in fiber and all kinds of fibers. Even though fruits and vegetables have fiber, they do not have the same levels as legumes, and whole grains are our best sources of fiber. And Americans are way too short on fiber. And then also there's a whole bunch of other vitamins and minerals that are found in that whole grain group. So I would really like to see people eat some grains. And I know that's a big subject right now. It doesn't mean they have to eat so many of them. It's like feast or famine. People in America are eating too many carbs. They're eating too many, mostly refined carbs. And even if it's just a small amount, I would like to see people include whole grains, and preferably in their whole form. And that means the way they came from the plant, like in the actual kernel.
Sharon, I know when you said the key source of fiber, are you thinking in terms of a quality of fiber, or is there something unique about the fiber in a whole grain that is not found in the fiber of a spinach? Because remember that my example, I was eating 10 to 20 servings of non-starchy vegetables per day. So I'm probably taking in, I mean, maybe even too much, 90 grams of fiber a day. I mean, that's a lot of fiber.
Yeah, you're right. It's true if you're eating that much. But yeah, well, it depends. Vegetables are not as high in fiber, but when you're eating that many, you probably don't need to worry about the total grams of fiber. Whole grains do have different kinds of fibers. So, it's just a case-by-case basis, but I still would like to see a couple of grain servings, because I think that they provide unique nutrients. But that's my preference. It doesn't mean that people have to just eat this enormous amount and base their whole diet on it. But, I'm not an advocate of eliminating the whole grain category. I know it's a really popular thing right now. I don't think there's enough evidence to support that.
Well, Sharon, it certainly seems like you live that message that you preach, which is let's take this on a case-by-case basis. We've got these universal principles where we look at the entire body of research out there, and we're guided, and it's pretty common sense, right? The stuff that is least messed with by people and most closely tied to nature and the most rich in nutrients is what we should be focused on. And that seems like that's at the core and the heart of your message and your mission.
Yes, that's true. I think we can all agree on that. And I'm glad to see that more and more people are getting that message.
Well, Sharon, what's next for you?
Well, I'm working on my next book, which is, you mentioned it, Plant Powered for Life, and it's due out in spring of next year. And it will be kind of a more simple approach. My first book was really like the primer. It had everything you need to know. And this is more of a simple, easy book with beautiful recipes and photography. I feel like my recipes are really approachable, and I get a lot of positive feedback on that. So, and I'm just really busy in my work doing a lot of writing. I'm the editor of Environmental Nutrition, and I have a blog if anybody wants to check it out, called the Plant Powered Dietitian blog at my website, which is www.sharonpalmer.com. So I'm out there doing a lot of speaking as well.
Well, I love it, Sharon, and I so appreciate that you are representing positivity along with your plant-based message, because I think whether it's plant-based or paleo, which itself is plant-based, or low carb, or whatever it is, when we come with a spirit of positivity and just like, hey, 90+% of Americans aren't even eating food. So maybe we should solve that before we argue about the nuance of the perfect way of eating, right? I so appreciate that.
I know, it's so funny.
Well, Sharon, thank you again for joining us today, and thank you for being such a ray of light in the nutrition community.
Well, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Listeners, our guest today was the delightful Sharon Palmer, RD. Again, you can learn more about her at her website, sharonpalmer.com, and you can also check out her book, which is called The Plant Powered Diet: The Lifelong Eating Plan for Achieving Optimal Health Beginning Today. Sharon, thanks again for joining us.
Thank you.
Listeners, I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did, and please remember, this week and every week after, eat smarter, exercise smarter, and live better. Chat with you soon.
Wait, don't stop listening yet.
You can get fabulous free SANE recipes over at carriebrown.com.
And don't forget your 100% free eating and exercise quick start program, as well as free, fun, daily tips delivered right into your inbox at bailorgroup.com. That's BAILOR group.com.